Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to ET Health World webinar. To present this webinar, I welcome Dr. Gaurav Thugral, Executive Vice President and COO, Healthcare at Home, on the topic Building ICU of the Future. There will be a presentation on the topic followed by a question and answer session wherein you can submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the question and answer session at the end of today's presentation. Now I would like to invite Dr. Gaurav Thugral. Over to you.
Thanks, Shubhrajit. So the topic of the webinar today is future of ICU. The various points which will be discussed with what is the future of ICU, how it helps the patient, the doctor, hospitals, payers, how we are going to provide for this, what is the role of nurse going to be, and how this is going to be a very patient-centric system. So what will be the future of the ICU? Well, it's a known fact that we have a great shortage of hospital beds. We are on an average of 0.7 beds per 1,000 population, whereas the world is sitting at, or the Western world is sitting at 4. Similarly, we have a shortage of nurses and we have a huge shortage of doctors also. Now, if we don't have nurses, we don't have doctors, we don't have hospitals, how we are going to manage our critically ill patients? And as we grow, as the population grows, these numbers are going to have a further mismatch. If I come to the ICUs, there are 70 patients waiting for one ICU bed. All these ICUs are further concentrated only into the metros which have these tertiary care hospitals. And we are well aware that all these ICUs are fully choked and there is a waiting period of 3 to 4 days in the emergency for somebody to get into the ICU. How do we solve the problem? Well, ICU at home or home healthcare is the solution. ICU at home can be built with a very less investment, less than 90% of what it will take to build a bed in the ICU, which is roughly to 1 crore. It can be turned around quickly. You don't need to wait for a building to be built and have all the infrastructure around it. And then I'll talk about how it can be resourced also. And we cannot debate the clinical safety of one-to-one nursing, patients and families' convenience when they are in their own surroundings, early recoveries, decreased infections, decreased complications, decreased readmissions, and definitively decreased cost. So ICU of the future, you are with your loved ones, in your own surroundings, in a surrounding which is infection-free, in a surrounding which has your own friendly bugs. There is no cross-contamination from another staphylococcal patient who can pass on that through a nurse, through equipment, or through the hands of a caregiver. Also, remote monitoring today enables caregivers to give hospital-like ICU quality at home, where step-downs can be managed at home. Here I show ICU of the future, which is being manned by a command center through intensivist. Intensivist can have data streaming from these ICUs at home, where continuously data can be streamed, alerts can be managed, interventions can be done timely. Because it is one-to-one nursing, early interventions will help reduce complications. Also, rounds can be conducted like in a live ICU, where the doctor can be speaking to the nurse through video calls, assess the patient, take rounds, change the care plans, and make the care plans very dynamic, where medications can be changed, labs can be ordered, and all things can be done which can be done in a step-down ICU. How to make this enabled? So it can all be enabled with the support of technology. The care plan has to be doctor guided, as we showed in the last slide. Everything needs to be documented. Everything which is jotted down onto ICU charts or onto ICU files need to be documented so that it goes in a seamless manner to the doctor who is monitoring all these cases. And then all this data has to be analyzed. It has to be benchmarked in case of early recoveries, in case of early weaning off, people moving from BiPAPs to tracheostomy to decannulation, catheter days, central line days, all these things needs to be managed, and it has to be audited properly. There has to be a clinical governance process, a clinical incidence process. It could be patient health charts through the system, which can capture all the things in a topographical or a graphical manner for the doctor to just see. Wound pictures can be captured and the summaries can be documented. And this is all paperless into the system. How it helps doctors? Well, it increases the retention on the patient, which today will get lost to follow-up when the patient goes home. It increases average revenue per bed, empties the bed by decreasing a loss for the patient who's waiting in the emergency. Most importantly, it's a peace of mind that the patient on which whom I have worked so well, can I send this patient a little bit early? Do I need to wait from a Saturday night to a Monday morning to be confident, oh, now the patient would be fine at home? And definitely this increases patient satisfaction and in turn has commercial benefits also. Undoubtedly, indirect cost in the form of infections and complications will also go down. Benefit to the hospital. Today, as I said, all the ICUs are concentrated into metros, into tier 1 cities. Anybody who's being treated into a NCR and would be coming from a hinterland in Rajasthan or from Bihar or from UP might not have that ICU facility. But ICU at home can give access to all these inaccessible places and become an extension to the hospital in a cost-effective manner. For the hospital, decreasing LOS increases ARPOB. And for the patient, as I said, it's a seamless transition of care. It's not that the patient is left to fend for itself beyond the boundaries of the hospital. The infections are reduced, readmissions are reduced, one-to-one nursing. We have proven data across the world that when insurance-led initiatives or payer-led initiatives from the government of US or NHS has protocolized ICU step-downs at home or into assisted living, it has reduced disease burden and cost significantly, which I'll be talking later on also. So coming to cost, if you just see this graph, always the hospital bills or the cost of treatment in the initial days is quite heavy because there are multiple diagnostics, multiple radiological diagnostics, multiple antibiotics, inotropes, which happen in the first 2-3 days. Further, the patient once gets stabilized will come to a stabilization phase, and post that in the recovery phase, there is no requirement of that patient to be into the ICU. The patient needs to be either moved into a HDU or into a ward, but our one-to-one nursing, our staff crunch of trained nurses who are to manage this patient and other paraphernalia lacks in case of a HDU or in case of a ward patient. Now is the time when you can have a further significant direct cost reduction of 50% to get this patient into a home ICU setup. Direct costs like a ward room or a medical fee or even room charges can be directly knocked off. And indirect costs, as I told you, in cases of infection rates, readmissions, hospital complications, these and decreased ALOS, increased ARPOB, all this leads to 50 to 70% of cost reduction from a hospital. How nurses play a big role in ICU? Well, before I answer this, where do we have nurses? We have a strong crunch of nurses to manage ICUs in the hospital. How do we get nurses to manage patients at home? How do we get nurses who are intelligent enough, who are trained enough to handle critical situations at hospital with a doctor available on remote monitoring? And that's where we need to look at upgrading the nurses to become ICU nurse practitioner. Diplomat of National Board has already rolled out courses on ICU nurse practitioners, and these are the nurses who are specialized in managing ICU patients on invasive ventilation, multiple inotropes, on central lines, and have the ability of critical decision making because they're trained like that. Now, if the nurse would graduate to become an ICU nurse practitioner, what will happen to the job which a nurse does? Well, that job can be done by upgrading and creating a different cadre of ICU nurse assistants and technicians who can take the job of a nurse. So we are utilizing every resource very carefully, where the doctor is doing a very specialized job of remotely monitoring this patient, the nurse is taking some part of the job of a doctor, and the nurse assistant is taking the job of a nurse, and we are creating further more resources to manage these patients. What is more important at home is the caregiver training, the training of the people who are in the home scanning that patient, that nurse, and all the people around that nurse. What is happening? It is very important to train the family in NOK, because in the hospital, we restrict them outside the doors of the ICU. But at home, they have to be part of caregiving. They have to be told how to keep the environment infection free, how to talk to the patient, how to have that whole balance between being at home and still being in a critical care situation. Further, point of care devices, life-saving equipment, which become part of the infrastructure at home are some things which we need to train our people. In the hospital, you have a biomedical engineer to look after oxygen, about suction, but you might not have a biomedical engineer full-time at homes. So the people, nursing assistants, the nurses have to be trained to take care of point of care lab devices, whether it's a ABG, whether it's a HbA1c, whether it's a hemoglobin, or life-saving devices like a ventilator, a BiPAP, or as small as a portable suction machine. So a mix of classroom, bedside training, home care training, and technology-enabled online evaluation systems can really knock out the resource crunch for managing these patients at home. How do you acquire talent? Well, people have to be certified. They have to be certified with Nursing Council of India or through skills HHSC. There are new courses which are coming for nursing assistants in home care. They have to be background check because you are being into somebody's home. So thorough background check on the criminal records, on the occupational records, on the training records need to be done. And then, as I elaborated in the last slide, competency oriented and AHA, BLS and ACLS certification of these people needs to be done because they will be treating patients alone at home. Further, anybody who's providing this solution needs to be a one-stop shop for providing this solution. It cannot work that the family is grappling with this problem of getting equipment from one place, nurse from the other place, physio from third, and then making up a whole jargon of making this critical care. So the provider who's providing this has to be a one-stop shop which screens the home environment, ensures it is safe, there is uninterrupted power supply, all the equipments are in, and lab radiology are seamlessly provided to these. And then again, we need to ensure how this care de-escalates from a home ventilation to somebody who's on care on tracheostomy and room wear. Technology, point care of devices, remote monitoring, lifestyle management, all these things are one-stop solution to provide ICUs at home. Further, the process has to be very customer-centric. We have to realize that it is a privilege to be into somebody's home. So the whole delivery process needs to start in the hospital by talking to the primary doctor, understanding what is the clinical care to be provided. All the elements which need to be provided at home need to be detailed and be provided well in advance. Also check that they are functioning. Care plan again needs to be finalized and be very dynamic in discussion with the doctor. Post that, there has to be transparency in the financial transactions. There should be, like a hospital, a finance counseling and a whole counseling on do's and don'ts and caregivers. Further, the team need to be there. There need to be backups for them. There needs to be supervision remotely and physically on these people. Assisted discharge from the hospital should be seamless to be done at home. And all this needs to be done in conjunction with the hospital nurses, with the hospital staff. Once onboarded, the whole care plan can be executed under the supervision of the doctors who are managing this patient remotely. Well, we can't outweigh the superior outcomes at home. As I told you, it is one-to-one nursing, which is a difficult proposition in the hospital, low infections. But yes, we need to churn out the clinical indicators on medication errors, adverse reaction, near misses, bed sore development, because these patients would be long-term bedridden and there will be 2 to 3 people working on it. Bed sore on Braden scores, VIP scores for central lines, catheter days, needle stick injuries, patient falls, mortality, all these indicators needs to be churned on periodic basis. And further outcomes need to be analyzed. What was the outcome when an NG tube needed to be removed? Was it benchmarked to any clinical standard internationally, or for the same patient being in the hospital, on ventilator weaning off, on outcome trackers on ventilator patients, and in fact even on central lines and BiPAPs. Some of the use case study of these patients would be prolonged ICU stay patients, neurosurgical, neurotrauma, neuro-oncology, who would be stuck in the hospital for want of such care in the community, restrictive lung diseases, palliative, terminally patients, end-of-life care patients, all these cases, and definitely end-of-life care patients who want a dignified death at home are the cases. Some case studies would be a patients, which I won't go into details of the clinical details of the cases, but patients where we had a difficult weaning, a patient who's end of life care, again a patient who has prolonged ICU stay, or a patient who is a pulmonary restrictive patient. To sum up the presentation, I believe that ICU at home is the future. It is already a well-proven concept across the globe. There are defined protocols of step downing these patients on ICU at home. It decreases the excess. The ICUs are built only in the metros because metros are able to afford that. Nobody goes and builds a state of the ICU in a tier 3 city, but ICU at home can be built in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. This increases the excess, and because the cost is less than 50% of being in a tertiary care institute, it increases affordability also. Here, because you can also have a reverse drain of the staff which is concentrated in these cities. These people come from the hinterland, can go back to their places in tier 2, tier 3 cities and man these ICUs. This also undoubtedly decreases the rates of hospital-acquired infections, complications, and readmissions. We need a lot of training and upgradation of healthcare professionals, as I discussed before. Technology is the key for monitoring and clinical interventions in this case, and all this needs to be supported by evidence-based medicine. Thank you.
Hello everyone. So I request you all to please send in your questions.
I'm trying to access the question in terms of ICU hospitals and for a matter of home, what is the real lacking problem in trends given by them? Have I read it correct? I'll repeat it. In terms of ICU hospital and for a matter of fact home, what is the real lacking problem in trends given out by them? I don't think I've understood this question. Could somebody elaborate on this? It's written again, given out by patient monitors. Okay. So the trends are not very different, I would say, because the same patient monitors are being used, and these monitors are now technology enabled to transmit all this data to command centers which have big monitors, and this data is being transmitted. The only difference of being into an ICU at home and ICU in the hospital is the criticality index. So here, we are not talking of replacing the ICUs. What we are talking of is that the ICUs need to manage people which are very critical and can be managed only at hospital, whereas patients which can be stepped down to an ICU at home should be managed at home. The next question is this covered by insurance, Mediclaim? Not as of now, but there are various pilots which are going on. Insurance, from its experience in the West, and very well knows that this is going to be a game changer for cost effectivity. Anybody who's spending around 50,000 to 1 lakh in the hospital will come to a ICU at home bed anywhere between 30,000 to 20,000 rupees a day. So insurance is still very of additional cost because most of these patients would have exhausted their sum insured. The day we have clear admission criteria into ICU at home, the insurance will definitely be funding it. I am taking question by Divya Sharma. Is there anybody who's already doing this in India? Yes, there are various home care providers. Healthcare at home based in Delhi NCR, Punjab, Jaipur, Bombay, Hyderabad, Bangalore is providing ICU at home to at least 100 patients at this time. Next is, how do you look at somebody misusing the LAMA cases in the casualty and emergency domain? Well, all the cases which are admitted into the ICU at home would be prescribed by the consultant. It could be the primary physician or it could be the ICU. In case of LAMA, when the patient says that I am agreeing that I would be discharged or I am leaving without on medical advice, the patient gets admitted into end-of-life protocol of ICU at home. And that's how we are not misusing this. Excellent proposal. Qualified manpower is less and having one nurse dedicated to one patient can further impact delivery of service. Rajendra, very well said, Rajendra. This will further impact, and that's why my whole case on how we graduate the nurses to become nurse practitioner in ICU, and we have this whole new cadre of nursing assistant in ICU to solve this problem. End of life care, Gajendra, end of life care pain management, is that possible? Definitely yes. A huge subset of patients at ICU would be end of life care who can have a dignified death. Pain management definitely in palliative onco care patient becomes very, very important and is being managed by these doctors and nurses. Rajendra, again, please share some inputs on regulatory compliance. NABH hospitals is very less, but this proposal has much more. Definitely, Rajendra, this has much more higher challenges. NABH as of now does not have any standards. There are international standards available, which is JCI, Care Quality Commission UK, which regulate them. But yes, there is a complete absence of regulatory compliance. It is a voluntary compliance which the organized home care providers like Healthcare at Home are witnessing, and that would be that all nurses should be credentialed. Their all background checks are done. They're privileged to do such things. They have biomedical waste license, and biomedical waste is being segregated as source. Are your nurses, Suresh is asking, are your nurses trained at the Berkeley Edu program? Yes, they are trained.
Hello, Dr. Tugral.
Yes, Shubhajit.
Can you please see the questions? We have a lot of questions.
I can see, but nothing. Yeah, I got now. I was not able to see. Yeah. Which disease conditions are covered under ICM? These would be mostly neurotrauma, neuro-onco, oncology, palliative care, pulmonary restrictive diseases, multi-organ failure. Divya's question, biggest challenges in ICU at home at this time, what's the experience of patient's family for this initiative? Well, Divya, the biggest challenge is awareness. Today, the patient or I won't say the patient, the family does not know that this facility exists in the community. The doctor does not know it exists in community. Convincing the doctor and the family is a challenge. Managing the logistics at times is a challenge. But I think the biggest challenge is the confidence into this concept. Panchagunla, how important and significant are the automated simulators in nursing training? Muralidhar, yeah. So Muralidhar, they are very important. These simulation-led models, because mostly patients won't allow a fresh nurse to do experiments on them. So these automated simulators become very important in the training of the nurses. Again, Anirban, what do you think is the percentage false alarm fatigues caused to nurses at ICU setups today? How, in your opinion, they can be reduced? Well, in ICU at home, it's one, you are supposed to look after only one patient, and you can't be with that patient more than 12 hours. So these alarm fatigues really go down. In terms of your equipment alarms also, because as I said, it's not that it is a noise going in the background because 10 monitors are firing at that time. So I don't think that's a case scenario in case of percentage false alarm fatigues. Gajendra, how is it possible in tier 2 cities? Yes, Gajendra, it is possible because we work in a hub and spoke method where we have created spokes into tier 2 cities where infrastructure is available, staff is available, technologically available, remote monitoring is available. So definitely this is a solution for ICUs in tier 2 cities. Then is quick last one by Suresh. What's the average cost for the patient? As I told you, the average cost from a hospital ICU, which would be anywhere between 1 lakh to 50,000, here would come anywhere between 20,000 to 10,000 inclusive of all over a daily basis. Suresh again asked, what's the cost per month? Well, the cost per month is very variable, but it's a trend that whenever somebody comes to a home setting care, we tend to calculate basis what is the average cost per day. So for example, if the patient is coming home at 5,000, we multiply directly by 30 saying, but that's not the way. It behaves absolutely as in the hospital, where also the expense is higher in the first few days and then they de-escalate. So average would definitely depend on the condition of the patient, but would graduate anywhere from, as I said, 20,000 a day to maybe 5,000 a day, depending on the criticality of the patient. Suresh is asking what percentage of patients that you expect to transit to ICU at home from regular ICU? At least 10 to 20% of the patients who are chronic patients, I would call them acute chronic patients who are stuck because of want of such facility in the community. Which is the best company providing automatic simulator? Muralidhar, I don't think I'll be able to answer it here, but maybe offline I can take it. Some global success stories, investment to RI. Yeah, there are a lot of global success stories, as I said, in Kaiser Home Care, in Bayada Home Care, even in Australia Home Care, there are various studies that this leads to a lot of good ROI. How do you ensure objective decision making while taking care of your patients? Do you also take care of clinical parameters? Definitely, and that is what I was trying to show you, that objective decision making happens basis the data which is being collated. In the hospital also, all objective decision making is based on two parameters. One, observing the patient or going bedside, doing a bedside round, and second, the clinical scores or the ICU charts which are filled over 24 hours. Same two things are being judged in this case also, and we take care of all the clinical parameters as in the ICU. Divya's question is, neurosurgeons and oncosurgeons doesn't buy this concept yet. They do whenever they see that this can be done. So our biggest prescribers have been neurosurgeons because they are perturbed by this thing that I have done this surgery with a lot of effort, and once this patient goes out of the ICU, that effort might be lost. So definitely it will take for all of them to know about this because it's a slowly growing concept, but once they see the quality and the benefits, they definitely buy it. The last question I got was at 3:26 p.m.
Some more questions flowing in, sir.
Yeah, so this is Muralidhar giving all details of simulation, automated simulations. It's not a question, it's an information. Any thoughts, Rajendra, any thoughts of taking on this? Definitely, that's the thought, because once, if insurance sees that this is a benefit, government definitely will see. Today, PSU patients, ECHS patients, CGHS patients, they stay in the ICU only because somebody else is paying for it. Definitely, once we have enough, so what we are doing next is we are publishing research publications into ICU journals to prove that whatever is happening has favorable outcomes. Once in emergency situations, the nurses are trained to handle emergency situations. They all are, as I said, ACLS trained. They should have with them at least all the emergency drugs in case of a mini crash cart with oxygens, and they should be able to handle the patient till the time an ACLS ambulance arrives. Can doctors operate clinic, can tie up with home care, healthcare at home for providing? Definitely, why not? Every doctor is free to work with healthcare at home. As a business, what do you think would be the key to influence surgeons? Well, as a business, I have shown enough benefits to the doctors, retention of patient, freeing their bed so that they can earn more revenue from the same bed, better surgical outcomes, which matters the most to a surgeon. If something goes wrong due to anybody's mistake, whether it's a nurse, whether it's a caregiver or the family, the blame goes directly to the surgeon. And that's what counts the best as a business student. Can you give some more details about training of nurses? Yes, the nurses which are coming out of the nursing colleges, I can't speak much about that, but all these nurses are then further groomed into tertiary care hospitals where they grow from a trainee nurse to a ward nurse to a HDU nurse to a ICU nurse. What we need to do is fast track this training, have a mix of classroom hands-on training in the ICUs and tertiary care, and then course modules on online space, which makes it a three-pronged study to enhance and crash course all this training in the ICU nurses. Is the doctor available for live consultation through telemedicine? Yes, by the nurse or family member, through the nurse in this case. Also, is the doctor constantly alerted at any time about it? Yes, the data which flows back has inbuilt alert mechanisms. And in the command center, the doctors are present 24/7. This also helps the nurses to have somebody handy, a medical person handy, in case of any escalation. How do customer complaints handled from remote locations? Well, customer complaints can be operational, it can be clinical. All the clinical complaints are first handled at the command center. Further, if need be, senior nurse practitioners and doctors are also sent to the site to manage all these things. So Richa wants to know, does absence of adequate regulatory mechanism expose companies providing these services to unwanted liabilities? How does a company protect its own? Definitely it does. The protection is same as that in the hospital. You need to have your checks and balances. You need to have formal consents of authorization, admission into the ICU, high risk consent, blood transfusion consent, procedural consent. Communication should be very clear. It should be documented of all the cases, even recorded if possible onto an audiovisual thing. And then the company needs to be indemnified for any eventualities. Suresh is asking, what is the biggest challenge? Awareness, doctor acceptance, family or trained staff? Trained staff, Suresh. After trained, if I have the trained staff and things start happening, awareness should not be a big deal. Prince asked me, since you have to manage patients in remote locations at their home, how do you ensure that the staff reaches the location in time? Are they doing work or not? Again, Prince, this would be technology enabled. If a company like Uber and Ola, through technology can ensure that their drivers are reaching on time, so can be done for clinical staff here. And remote monitoring technology where all these visits, as I say, or all these shifts are being logged into the system, and this can be viewed on a dashboard where you know which staff is working there through GPS tracking. This definitely can be controlled. So how does a doctor communicate to the nurse from command center in case of nurse misses out to attend a critical event? Well, the doctor can first use the phone. They can even use video calling facilities to do this. What about maintenance of ICU quality standards at home? So ICU quality standards are maintained as per the standards laid down by JCI and CQC, and they can be replicated at home with the minor adaptations. One misconception which people have that the home would be an infected environment whereas ICU is clean is absolutely wrong. Homes are clean and homes are safe because we have our friendly bugs. ICUs are not safe because they have cross-contamination from other patients. In the home, you are the only patient, and hence it's very safe, and all the standards are easy to replicate. Suresh is asking, what are the steps taken by yourselves to make public aware about these benefits? Do you think acceptance will be gradual or faster like Uber Ola? Well, I feel because this is healthcare and not a commodity service, it won't happen overnight. For a healthcare service, the trust is the thing which is the key, which takes time. And what all we are doing is doing sessions like this, talking to doctors, doing education of patients whose education of families whose patients are stuck into this. We are also talking to Palliative Society of India, going to Indian Society of Critical Care Medicine, publishing these things so that more and more awareness can be generated. How do you ensure adequate power backups and minimum power requirements? Yeah, that's a very, very important point. Recently in the deluge of Mumbai, it was a tough task getting these people have uninterrupted power supply. These buildings which already have gensets, we had to install additional gensets. All the machines which we use at home have to have UPS so that at least 2 to 4 hours can be bought on uninterrupted power supply. Though it is a path-breaking concept, I do not see much awareness of this practice in India. Do you have any plans to promote? Definitely, Rupali, this is a step ahead in the same direction. Can highly critical or ventilator patients be treated competently at home? Are doctors with you on this? Yes, once a doctor has seen the quality, he has seen the outcome, he's definitely with us. Home ventilation is a reality where patients can be managed on ventilators with multiple inotropic support and multiple antimicrobial support at home. We have various case studies to prove it. Any more questions?
Yeah, indeed. We'll wait for 2 more minutes for any more questions, or we'll proceed to wrap up this session.
Yeah, got another one. How can we address the employee attrition which happens at a 15% can be designed, but beyond the same, it will be detrimental? Correct, Muralidhar. Employee attrition is the problem, and you can address it by doing two things. One is enhancing the capability. When an employee enters the organization and he has a clear roadmap that this is the place where I'll be in 2 years in terms of my financial condition, that acts as a retention. And then if employee becomes as important as your customer, as your internal customer, you'll do everything to retain that employee. And that's again is a different thing in home ICU where doctors don't take the center stage as they're remotely monitoring. How to manage any specified specialty medical care? I am not able to understand this question, Anuba. How to manage any specified specialty medical care required? Rupali asked, so the go-to-market model of this practice is through hospital doctors only, or patients can opt for your services? Patients can opt for this independently also, but when a doctor says that there is a possibility of ICU at home, it gives a lot of credibility to the concept. Thanks, Suresh, if you liked it. Gajendra is asking, what is the toughest case you have encountered in ICU care? The toughest case which we have encountered is we are doing a home ventilation for last 1 year. This is a 67 years old female with multiple organ dysfunction, aspergillosis, and she has been in and out of the ventilator. And we would have done a lot of end-of-life care cases where the clinical criticality is not that important as the emotional criticality of the family. Is there any single technology provider who can cater to this service point-to-point healthcare at home? Rajendra, thanks for attending the session. Will this slide deck be shared with all the webinar attendants? I think ET Health would be able to reply to that. Shubhajit would reply to that. Richa is asking, is there a service provided on standalone basis, or the doctor under whose surgery was done in the hospital remains aware of day-to-day updates about the patient? We make it a point that the doctor is aware, because it always helps that the doctor is aware that about what is happening to the patient, even beyond the confines of the hospital.
All right. So it's time to wrap up this session. Thank you, Dr. Gaurav Thugral, for this webinar on the topic Building ICU of the Future. If you have any other questions, please send them at editor@ethealthworld.com. It was an engaging and insightful talk, and we hope all the participants have enjoyed the session.